This is Matt Tucker, and I want to welcome you to the 5 reasons startup health companies fail during the launch phase or stall shortly after, and what to do about it. We have a lot to cover, so let's hop right in. To make sure you're in the right place, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and if you answer yes to two or more, then you are going to get a lot out of this video. So, are you having a lot of customer conversations, but you're coming up empty with product adoption? Are you seeing strife between your sales and marketing team members? And do you notice that they're blaming or finger pointing at each other? Are you or your team jumping from initiative to initiative without success? Are you feeling significant pressure or impatience from your board or venture capital? And lastly, are you confused about where healthcare is going? If you found yourself nodding your head, stick with me. I also think you should continue watching if you want to create a better plan of attack. You want to know how the future of healthcare is going to affect your business. You feel that payers and health system decisions are a mystery. Your main goal is to be acquired by a large medical device or pharmaceutical manufacturer. And definitely keep watching if you have launched a product and it is stalled or plateaued. Alternatively, stop the video right now if you're dedicated to doing it your way and are not open to new ways of doing things. If you've hired commercial leaders and plan on just waiting for them to solve it, you can stop now. If you think big pharma or medical device never second guess themselves when considering a deal, you can stop now. And lastly, if you think you can solve all the problems you have for free, there's no need to continue. What are the 5 reasons companies fail or stall? First of all, they can be misaligned to the rapidly changing healthcare ecosystem. They can misunderstand the real customer and what they care about. There's too much thought and effort focused on what's going inside the business, and it's hard for leadership to take a step back. Fourth, the company isn't being designed with the end in mind. That might be an acquisition or exit. And lastly, you're working with advisors or consultants that are too narrow in their expertise or just flat out don't really know what they're doing. Because it's impossible to look at your business like an outsider and so easy to become inwardly focused and miss opportunities, I help companies identify ways to innovate so they can accelerate their growth. It's also very hard to keep up on the trends that are going on in healthcare today and to be able to navigate things successfully. I help companies make better strategic decisions so they can avoid mistakes that could either delay revenue generation or could create even bigger problems. Over the course of my career, I've been a catalyst for product and portfolio growth and organizational transformation. While I've had a number of diverse experiences leading products and portfolios at large multinational companies like Baxter Healthcare and Mylan Pharmaceuticals, my time at Highmark Health has given me a truly unique perspective that others just don't have. I've also founded 2 successful companies. One is a healthcare consultancy working with VC, startups, and other small companies in medical devices, diagnostics, or other medtech categories. And the second was a regional medical device distributorship where I created a portfolio of 6 medical devices used for plastic surgery and cosmetic procedures. I perfected my commercialization and management approach at Baxter Healthcare, where I was taught to focus on building sustainable businesses that capitalized on opportunities over the long term. This taught me to avoid fly by night strategies that would ultimately create problems down the road. I'm a coach and a mentor who has helped others do the best work of their careers. My background is technical, achieving my bachelor's in chemistry and my MBA with a focus on global finance. I'm a member of the board of directors at Facing Forward, which is a nonprofit in Chicago working tirelessly to end homelessness. And I'm the author of The Selfish Career, a book about taking ownership of your professional life, which is available on Amazon for purchase. Before we move on, I think it's important for us to quickly talk about why healthcare is so broken. You can ask any thought leader in healthcare why healthcare is broken, and you're going to get a different answer. Everyone has their theories, but I'm going to tell you mine. The system of healthcare we have today, which is generally focused on treating symptoms of conditions rather than the cause, was created at a time when patients weren't nearly as sick as they are today, and there really weren't that many treatments or technologies to make an impact. As we moved past the post war era and dual incomes became necessary to provide a high standard of living, our lifestyles became more about convenience than health. Nutrition was sacrificed and poor diets increased, creating an obesity epidemic throughout the United States. This has resulted in a population that is generally extremely unhealthy. At the same time, there have been significant technological advancements that also help treat the conditions more effectively at the same time that they're increasing in numbers. Now, healthcare is essentially a collection of misaligned companies trying to solve problems one small piece at a time because no one can really influence everything that is needed for the patient. Incentives between these companies are misaligned, and there's often competition and conflict of interests. The various companies try to make money off of each other, and costs for services and products are generally hidden from the buyer. All the while, patients still trust their doctor's judgment more than they do anyone else. But because patients are at a significant information disadvantage, they're generally ill equipped to advocate for better care. Lastly, doctors don't pay for the cost of any of the tests or meds that they order or procedures that they do, and that results in a lack of accountability for any of their decisions. There are a few ways the healthcare community is trying to fix the problem. The biggest trend is a move from fee based to value based care. This means instead of getting paid for each service you provide to a patient, you get paid based on the quality of care you deliver. This essentially means you get paid for making your patient actually better. To help facilitate this, many provider networks and health insurance payers are creating care models that roadmap how a patient should be treated for any given condition. To help facilitate this, many provider networks and health insurance payers are creating care models that roadmap how a patient should be treated for any given condition. This is supposed to reduce variability and make sure everyone is getting care that is high quality. In the meantime, non traditional companies are entering the healthcare space and trying to use technology to address the healthcare crisis. Additionally, our government representatives, whether at the state or federal level, increasingly are talking about a desire for Medicare for all and bringing socialized medicine to the US. I think it's important for us to understand where healthcare is today so we can make investment decisions that are aligned with where healthcare is going in the future. Now let's dig in deeper into the 5 misunderstood reasons. As we just discussed, there are a number of changes going on right now to solve the healthcare crisis. These create both opportunities and threats for every emerging company. If companies are not aligned to where healthcare is going, they will launch and they'll fail. Because of the move to value based care and increasingly prescriptive care models, there are a few things that companies need to be thinking about. To gain adoption, they will have to demonstrate clinical superiority over the standard of care. It's not going to be good enough to be as good as another product on the market. You're going to have to show that you're better. But showing that you're better isn't just about clinical outcomes. It also has to create an economic value that results in new revenue streams or cost savings. Because treatment patterns for complex conditions are increasingly complicated, everyone is looking for technologies and innovations that reduce complicated care pathways and make it easier and more efficient to deliver that care to patients. If you aren't making care delivery easier or more efficient, at a minimum, you don't want to disrupt doctor practice patterns, which can lead to frustration and confusion by healthcare practitioners. Payers and health systems and provider networks are also looking for products that help solve niche problems, but also stay in their lane over the long term. Lastly, the holy grail for payers and health systems are risk free agreements where they are essentially insured against waste or ineffectiveness of the products they're purchasing. So, what happens when companies and leadership aren't aligned to what we just discussed? Well, eventually, what you see upon launch is a lack of uptake or a product sales plateau. While you may find some doctors who will adopt the product, you don't get very far, and generally, sales just halt. Many companies will continue to throw marketing dollars at the problem, but it doesn't actually yield additional sales. And that's because they're not aligned to the overall value proposition that is needed to make progress within the market. You also begin to see strife between sales and marketing and lots of finger pointing. Each group will say that the other isn't doing a good enough job when it really isn't the sales or marketing efforts that are the problem at all. It's the design of how the product was brought to market and whether or not there was an appropriate focus on the value proposition for the product. You also start to see disagreement within the team and leadership about the direction the product or the direction the company should take. This is because everyone's looking for an answer, but they're actually not looking in the right place. When these things happen, you're also going to see increased pressure and impatience from the board of directors, the venture capital leadership, or even the executive leadership on the team, feeling that stress because they're not making the progress that they actually anticipated they would. And then lastly, frustration. Frustration will permeate through all parties and will just continue to get worse because progress isn't being made. Let's hop into a case study. I previously led a brand that was 17 years old and right around $40 million a year that was used for pain management during surgical procedures. For the previous 3 years, unit sales continued to decline, and the only way they were able to maintain revenue was through very large 20% price increases that really irritated customers. When I talked to providers, they actually said that the product was completely unnecessary, wasn't worth the money, and it didn't contribute to better patient care. So this was right around the time when quality metrics were taking hold in the operating room. Obviously, my goal was to grow sales significantly and reestablish this brand as top of mind and drive alignment between marketing and sales who just weren't on the same page at all. So the key to my approach was realigning the brand positioning to have a product that could improve quality metrics that all the doctors were now being measured on. I rebranded the product and created a complex marketing ecosystem and established a new sales operation plan that focused on targeting customers that had the highest opportunity and implemented a new needs-based selling approach focusing on the importance clinicians were placing on those new quality metrics. I ended up growing this brand massively, but the first year it was a rebuilding year and it only increased from about 40 to $43 million. But the second year, when everything started clicking, the product really took off and we grew 30%, which no one at all expected. I eventually received a brand champion award by the national magazine PM360. So why is this story important? It's important because it shows that if your product is not aligned to the needs of the provider and the healthcare ecosystem, you just don't make progress. Once we had aligned our value proposition and our education on how you use the product to meet the quality metrics, the brand took off. We established niche uses and established clinical superiority that highlighted the ability to wake patients up faster from surgery. Our number two reason that VC backed healthcare companies fail is because they actually have poor customer alignment. This one is tricky, but what I've seen is that early stage startup companies are overly focused on providers. While providers are important, they're not the only important customer. And when I say this, I don't just mean patients. Your product strategy and your business design has to include a variety of other customers, such as health insurers, IDNs, administration, office staff, and even advocacy groups. What makes this challenging is that medical policy, formulary, product committees, and reimbursement decisions are generally shrouded in mystery. Luckily, my unique background has exposed me to their. I'm sure what happens when you miss addressing key customer needs will not be a surprise. I've experienced providers expressing excitement and saying they want to adopt, but in reality, the sales never happen, and your company ends up having a very high amount of activity, but low to no results. Again, there's more strife between sales and marketing who finger point at each other about who's not doing a good enough job. The company begins jumping from initiative to initiative without success because they're grasping at straws. They're trying to find a solution, but they're usually focused on the wrong things. There is pressure and impatience from the board, venture leadership, and executive leadership because they're really just confused and don't understand why such a great technology is not being adopted. Okay, case study number two. I inherited an underperforming $100 million plus COPD brand with about 30% market share and only one other competitor in the market. Sales had been stagnant for 4 years. The product had been rebranded recently and the materials were effective. They didn't need any improvement, and even the Salesforce efforts and targeting were recently optimized, but there was still just no traction. My goal was to think creatively and determine new ways to grow the product through non traditional means. My approach was to create strategic partnerships with multiple DME companies and align efforts that focused on the highest value prescribing doctors. I designed a contracting strategy that rewarded DMEs with discounts for significant market share increases. And we also drove collaboration between our sales force and the DME company's sales force so they could coordinate targets and amplify efforts and results. In the end, market share went from 30% to 40% in 2 years, and revenue was increased by about 10 million. So why is this story so important? Well, it's important because it shows the impact of aligning to the right customer or leveraging a secondary customer that was undervalued. Before undertaking this strategy, leadership was frustrated and confused because providers kept giving positive feedback about the product and our message. But what wasn't aligned was the distribution strategy through the DMEs and how much an impact they had on product fulfillment. The number three reason why a startup healthcare company fails is because there is too much of an internal focus. Being too internally focused is when you are not able to see the forest from the trees. You lose sight on balancing the market's needs with what is going on in your own company and with your own stakeholders. This can be exacerbated when there are gaps in your understanding of how the healthcare ecosystem works. Relying too much on the opinions of doctors and providers, whether they are paid by the company or not, can also continue to take you down rabbit holes that don't balance business needs with the clinical needs. As well, spending the time building a new culture within your company or working very hard to establish a leadership team can result in you being too focused on the inside of the company and not enough on the outside. Lastly, if the company is focused too much on the inside, you lose touch with what good looks like and aren't using the best in class strategies or best in class operational models that give you a greater chance of success. Our third case study. This situation is actually a very positive one. The CEO and COO of a new medical device startup were looking for strategic advice and guidance. They were first timers, but were very open to getting the help they needed to make sure that they were on the right path. They had an innovative surgical technology and a 510(k) that was pending, but had a lack of experience launching products into the market. I was asked to establish a perspective on the initial commercial launch, including how to position against competitors, develop a promotional plan, cultivate key opinion leaders, and generally ensure that the leadership team was making good decisions. As I built out a full commercial launch strategy, we conducted weekly conference calls where I fielded questions from the CEO and COO about the challenges that they had faced over the course of the week. We worked together in a very organic nature, and as we discussed their progress, I was able to guide them in their approach so they would be more effective. Sometimes this included developing simple discussion guides for them to use with clinicians, and other times I would act as a third party to interview regional sales distributor candidates. Since then, the product has received 510(k) approval, and they are currently manufacturing their launch product and expect a very positive market reception. The fourth reason VC-backed healthcare companies fail is that the business has not been designed with the end in mind. Sometimes when I bring up the subject, it gets touchy. And it gets touchy because the question I'm asking is if everyone is really on the same page. Does everyone have the same end game? Are goals aligned across the company and the leadership team? You can't assume that they are, and it's best to verify. Defining a clear vision for the company is critically important. It's equally important to share that vision so everyone is rowing in unison and everyone is going the same direction. The vision should be created to define the big picture objective. Is the company looking to be acquired? Would you rather sign a licensing agreement or have a marketing partnership? Or is the founding team walking into the sunset after the product development cycle is over and the product is launched into the market? Additionally, if you're trying to be acquired, are you designing the company in a way that makes it attractive? In addition to the product the company is launching, are the company leaders asking themselves questions to make sure that they are solving problems that will be beneficial to the acquiring companies? These are the signs that everyone is not aligned or on the same page. There's a focus on the wrong things, and it seems like people are going different directions. There's typically dissent and discord within different groups inside the company. No one is carrying on active discussions about acquiring companies. Orders and demands are being given by the leadership team instead of collaboration, teamwork, and co-creation of solutions. And lastly, your spidey sense is tingling and you just feel like something is wrong. Our fourth case study is about a company I worked with two ADD founders. This was in the medical device space, and both of these people were first timers. They did have a commercially available product, and it was available for sale, but they had a complete lack of clarity on where they were going long term. This company had not established a detailed vision that aligned everyone in the team, including the angel investors and the day-to-day staff. Because of this lack of clarity, people were working against each other unwittingly. Some people were trying to get market adoption, and others were trying to redevelop the product based on feedback. Everyone was going in different directions because there was no clarity on the overall goal for everyone to rally around. Frustration, dissent, and discord increased day by day. The company was a revolving door of employees and contractors, none of which understood the direction of the company, each going along for the ride as long as it lasted. The CEO had a tendency to move from one project to another, but never fully closing anything out. The day to day team was constantly shifting directions and routinely was frustrated. This company has continued to tread water and not make any real progress. The website indicates clearly that they continue to change focus every 6 months. I think this story is important because it tells you what not to do. It tells you that if you don't design with the end in mind and you don't establish a company vision that everyone can rally around, things can go bad really quickly. You can end up spending a lot of money and not getting anything out of the endeavor, and generally complicating things to where there's no hope for the company at all. The fifth and final reason why VC backed healthcare company startups fail is because they don't leverage best in class industry insiders as advisors. While it's important to bring in subject matter experts for things like manufacturing or regulatory approvals, those individuals don't typically exhibit the qualities of a true industry insider who can help the company achieve the success everyone is hoping for. When you're looking for the best in class industry insider that can really amplify your chances of success, there are a few things to look for. You want to make sure that person has diversity in their experience. This ensures that they have encountered a variety of business models and business challenges and are good problem solvers. They should have previous P&L responsibility so they fully understand the accountability that the founders they are working with face. They should have both big company and startup experience so they understand how to bring best in class, big company diligence, but apply it in a rapid and nimble environment. They should be steeped in the business of healthcare, but also have a technical or clinical background so they can adequately understand the reasons why innovations can be so groundbreaking. They should have acquisition and integration experience as well to help position the company for an exit at the highest valuation. And lastly, they should be a thought leader within the industry and up to date on the latest changes affecting healthcare. So, what happens when you don't have the right kind of advisors? The first thing you get is silo thinking, because the advisors are typically focused on very narrow areas of expertise. They will let that lens affect everything they touch. You'll see hourly fees on projects that routinely have scope creep and never seem to end. Proposals and contracts are not outcomes based, and often the advisors eventually ask for a job or a full time role. There's such a great opportunity in the startup world to bring innovations that really make a difference, both economically and clinically for patients. But it is important to avoid a number of pitfalls that can plague a startup and prevent them from becoming successful. There are a number of ways we could work together. First of all, we could develop a commercial strategy that allows you to have the greatest opportunity for success within the market. Many companies need program development. I could develop a world class program for you that may include advisory boards with clinicians or sales training models to allow your sales force to do better than ever. Sometimes leaders just need a sounding board, and that's where general commercial advising comes in. I'll make sure you're up to date on the latest best practices, as well as understand where healthcare is going. Essentially, I'll always make sure you sound smart no matter who you're talking to. Lastly, we can dig deeper into health systems and payers so I can teach you how they make decisions and how best to set yourself up for success. So, if this video has resonated with you, I think it's a great opportunity to dig a little deeper. The link to my shared calendar is here. After digging deeper, if it makes sense for us to explore working together, there are a variety of different models. Once again, I'd just like to say thank you. I'm looking forward to speaking with you soon.